And there's a reason for that. Because while everyone else was building tanks to fight other tanks, the British were building tanks to fight the war itself. That sounds vague. It isn't. Stay with me. By 1940, after the disaster at Dunkirk, Britain had lost nearly 850 tanks in a matter of weeks. Gone. Burned. Abandoned. What came next wasn't just rebuilding. It was rethinking what a tank even is. And that's how you end up with one of the strangest and most misunderstood tank lineups of the entire war. Cruiser tanks, infantry tanks, flame-throwing monsters, tanks with bridges on their backs. Some brilliant, some disasters, some both at the same time. Let's start at the bottom. Early war, when Britain was still figuring it out. The light tank Mco-6, officially introduced in 1936. Weight, about 5 tons. Crew, 3 men. Top speed, 56 kilometers per hour. Armor, at best, 14 millimeters. That's thinner than your phone. This thing wasn't meant to fight tanks. It was meant to scout, drive fast, spot the enemy, report back. And in theory, that makes sense. In practice, it was a death trap. During the Battle of France in 1940, these tanks went up against German Panzer IIs and IVs, cannons versus machine guns. It wasn't even close. A single German 37mm shell would punch straight through. Crews didn't stand a chance. Private Arthur Collins, 22, Royal Tank Regiment, his unit lost 7 out of 9 tanks in a single engagement near Arras. He survived. Most didn't. Too fast. Too weak. Still, it taught the British something critical. Speed alone doesn't win tank battles. Which brings us to their first real attempt at a proper fighting tank. The cruiser Mk1, also known as the A9, entered service in 1938. Weight, 13 tons. Speed, 40 km each. Armor, up to 14 millimeters. Main gun, a 2-pounder. That's a 40mm cannon. Now we're talking. This was Britain's first cruiser tank. Fast, mobile, designed to exploit breakthroughs. Think cavalry, but with tracks. The idea was simple. Infantry tanks break the line. Cruiser tanks rush through and cause chaos behind enemy lines. Sounds good, but again, reality hit hard. Thin armor meant it couldn't survive direct hits. And that 2-pounder gun? It had no high explosive shell early on, which means it could punch through armor, but it struggled against infantry, anti-tank guns, or anything not made of steel. Weird trade-off. Captain James Whittaker, North Africa, 1941. His cruiser tank knocked out 2 Italian tanks, then got pinned down by a single anti-tank gun it couldn't effectively destroy. He had to retreat. Firepower, with a blind spot, so the British doubled down. The cruiser Mk4 A13 Mk2. 1939. This one matters. Weight, 14 tons. Speed, 48 km/h. Armor, up to 30mm. Still using the 2-pounder gun. But here's the upgrade, Christie suspension. That's a fancy way of saying better wheels, better speed, smoother ride. The same concept that later influenced the Soviet T-34. Now cruiser tanks could move fast across rough terrain, which in the North African desert was everything. And for a moment, it worked. British forces used these tanks to outmaneuver Italian units in Libya. Fast strikes, quick withdrawals, but then they met the Afrika Korps, German Panzer III. Better armor, better tactics, better coordination. And suddenly, speed wasn't enough again. Fast doesn't beat smart, which forces a shift, a big one. Now we get to the opposite philosophy. The infantry tank Mk2, the Matilda II, introduced in 1939. Weight, 27 tons. Speed, 24 km, armor up to 78 millimeters. Let that sink in. At a time when most German tanks had 30mm armor, this thing had more than double, and it showed. During Operation Compass in 1940, Matildas rolled through Italian defenses almost untouched. Italian anti-tank guns literally bounced off. Soldiers called it the Queen of the Desert, untouchable. But there's always a catch. Same 2-pounder gun. No high explosive shell early on. Slow speed, mechanical complexity. And then came the Germans. The famous 88mm anti-aircraft gun repurposed as a tank killer. One shot. Penetration. Done. Sergeant Harold Bennett described it. You'd feel invincible until the first Matilda exploded. Invincible until it wasn't. Still, the lesson stuck. Armor matters. So the British tried to combine both worlds. Enter the Valentine tank, 1940. One of the most produced British tanks of the war. Over 8,000 built. Weight, 18 tons. Armor up to 65 millimeters. Speed 24 km/h. Reliable, cheap, easy to produce. Not flashy, but effective. It served everywhere. North Africa, Eastern Front, even the Pacific. Its gun improved over time from the 2-pounder to the 6-pounder 57mm, finally giving it real anti-tank capability. Lieutenant David Morgan, 8th Army, his Valentine survived 11 engagements in Libya. Not because it was the best, because it kept working. Boring wins wars. And that's something people miss. Not every tank needs to be a superstar. Some just need to show up. Again, and again, and again. But then, Britain built something far more ambitious. The Churchill tank, infantry tank Mk4, introduced in 1941. This thing looks wrong, long, low, tracks wrapping all the way around. Weight, 40 tons. Armor up to 102mm. Speed, 24 kilometers. But here's the wild part. It could climb slopes other tanks couldn't even approach. Steep hills, trenches, rubble. If the battlefield looked impossible, the Churchill just kept going. During the Dieppe raid in 1942, Churchill tanks landed on the beach under heavy fire. Many got stuck. Some broke down. It looked like a disaster. And it was. But the ones that worked, they demonstrated something critical. Extreme terrain capability. Later in Normandy, that ability became invaluable. Major Peter Collins, his Churchill cross-terrain German commanders thought was impassable. They weren't ready. It goes where others can't. But again, problems. Early models were unreliable. Engines failed. Tracks snapped. Crew confidence? Low. So once again, the British adapted. Because adaptation is the real story here. Every failure fed the next design. And by the time we reach the mid-war period, everything changes. Because now British tanks aren't just trying to survive. They're starting to specialize. And the next category? It's where things get really interesting. Now we hit the moment where British tank design stops experimenting and starts hitting back. Because by 1943, there's a new problem rolling across Europe. The Tiger I, 56 tons, 88mm gun, armor up to 120mm. It could destroy most Allied tanks from over 2 kilometers away. You didn't fight a Tiger, you survived it. Unless you had this, the Sherman Firefly. Technically American, M4 Sherman chassis. But the British turned it into something else entirely. They took their most powerful anti-tank gun, the 17-pounder 76.2mm, and somehow squeezed it into the turret. That wasn't easy. They had to rotate the gun sideways just to fit the breech. The radio got shoved into a box welded onto the back of the turret. It looked awkward. It worked perfectly. That 17-pounder could penetrate a Tiger's frontal armor at around 1,000 meters, which at the time was a game changer. Corporal Alan Reeves, Normandy, 1944. His Firefly knocked out 2 Panthers and a Tiger in a single day. 3 shots, 3 kills. Finally equal firepower. German tank crews quickly learned to identify Fireflies. That long barrel gave it away. And they made it priority target number 1. Because if you saw one, you didn't wait. You fired first. But the British didn't abandon speed. They refined it. The Cromwell tank, cruiser Mk8s, entered service in 1944. Weight, 28 tons. Speed up to 64 kilometers / one of the fastest tanks of the war. Armor up to 76mm. Main gun 75mm. This thing could move. Powered by the Rolls-Royce Meteor engine. Yes, derived from a Spitfire aircraft engine, which means you're basically driving a plane engine inside a tank. And it shows. British armored divisions used Cromwells for rapid exploitation, breaking through lines, racing ahead, cutting supply routes. Captain Michael Turner described it. You didn't fight in a Cromwell, you hunted. Speed becomes a weapon. But again, trade-offs. The 75mm gun was decent, not exceptional. Against Panthers and Tigers, it struggled. So Cromwells avoided direct duels. They flanked. They outmaneuvered. They survived. Different philosophy. Then comes the Comet. And this is where everything starts to come together. Introduced in late 1944. Weight, 33 tons. Armor up to 101mm. Main gun, 77mm. She high velocity. Don't let the number fool you. That 77mm gun was essentially a compact version of the 17-pounder. Same killing power, smaller package, which means better handling, faster reload, more flexibility. Finally, speed, armor, and firepower in one tank. Lieutenant Andrew Clark, Germany, 1945. His Comet engaged a German Panther at 800 meters. 2 shots. Kill confirmed. Balance achieved. Not perfect, but close. And just as Britain figures it out, the war is ending. Timing matters. But before we step back, we need to talk about something uniquely British. Not just tanks, specialized tanks. Because the British didn't just build vehicles to fight. They built vehicles to solve problems. Start with the Churchill Crocodile, same Churchill chassis, but now it carries a flamethrower. Range, about 120 meters. Fuel trailer attached behind carrying 1,800 liters of fuel. Imagine seeing that coming toward you. Flames reaching across a football field. German bunkers that resisted artillery fire surrendered within minutes. Fire changes everything. Corporal Jean Dupont, French resistance fighter, watched a crocodile clear an entire fortified position in under 10 minutes. No prolonged battle, just fire. Psychological weapon as much as physical. Then there's the Churchill AVRE, Armored Vehicle Royal Engineers. This one doesn't even look like a tank anymore. It carries a 290mm mortar called the Petard. Range, 80 meters. But when it hits, it demolishes bunkers, walls, obstacles. It also carries fascines, giant bundles of wood, dropped into trenches so other tanks can cross. Bridges, demolition charges. This isn't a tank, it's a toolbox on tracks. War, engineered. Sergeant Thomas Reed, D-Day. His AVRE cleared obstacles under fire so infantry could advance. Without it, they're stuck on the beach. And that changes everything. And it doesn't stop there. Bridge-laying tanks. Crab tanks with rotating flails to detonate mines. Yes, spinning chains hitting the ground to trigger explosives before anyone steps on them. Wild, effective, terrifying, solve the problem. Anyway, now step back for a second. Look at the pattern, because this is the moment most people miss. Here's the aha. Most people think World War II tank design was about building the biggest, strongest machine. It wasn't. It was about solving specific battlefield problems, faster than your enemy. The British didn't build the best tank. They built the right tank for the situation. Need to break defenses? Matilda. Need reliability? Valentine. Need terrain capability? Churchill. Need speed? Cromwell. Need anti-Tiger firepower? Firefly. Need balance? Comet. Need to clear a bunker? Crocodile. Different tools. Same war. There is no perfect tank. And that idea? It didn't die in 1945. It evolved. Today's militaries still follow it. Modern armies don't rely on one super weapon. They build systems, drones, artillery, tanks, electronic warfare, weapons that don't shoot bullets but send signals to jam enemy communications and blind their sensors. Same logic, different century. So which British tank was the best? It depends on the question. Most powerful? Firefly. Most reliable? Valentine. Most versatile? Churchill variants. Most balanced? Comet. But the real answer is all of them, because together they tell the story of adaptation under pressure, failure after failure, turning into something that works, that wins. Private Collins, Captain Whitaker, Lieutenant Clark, different tanks, different battles, same war. And none of them fought with a perfect machine. They fought with what they had, improvised, adapted, survived. That's the real story of British tanks in World War II. Not perfection. Progress, built through failure, and in war, that's enough.